This is what Portal looks like. And using 3 steps, this is what it could look like. Ruining the graphics to the highest degree possible. Here we are in Chamber 16, and this is what, if you boot up Portal today, this is close to probably what your game would look like. I do have a no target on because I do appreciate the turrets, lasers, and the red that's added. And overall, this looks like a pretty good chamber. For the first level, as mentioned earlier, we're going to start with a graphics downgrade. Now, obviously, we can go into options, video, and just turn them down here. Low, 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 simple, low, disabled, none, disabled, disabled, and none. The game is looking a little bit worse now, definitely. Textures are a lot more grainy, almost flatter. And some of the models are quite jagged, like this door here. So overall, it's already starting to look not too great. Let's show our FPS, just to see how we're doing on that front. CL_show FPS 1. Now in the top right, we're getting currently 300. Now, Portal, by default, limits its FPS to 300, so we're currently maxing that out, and with VSync disabled, we're surpassing the monitor's refresh rate, but we can actually raise that cap. You can type FPS_max 1000. That is the highest without the cap it'll go. We're now getting quite close to maxing that out. As a matter of fact, I can see that there's 9, but I cannot read the numbers after. They're changing way too quickly. But I think it's safe to say we're running around 1,000 frames per second with Portal on the minimum graphics. But we can go a step further. Portal has a special version designed for lower-end hardware that runs on DirectX 8, while the main game, as it is running right now, runs on DirectX 9. And the easiest way to tell them apart is by looking at the portals themselves. In the DirectX 8 version, they look very different. So why don't we try and switch over to that now? Alright, here we are. This is Portal running the DirectX 8 version. The most immediate detail you'll notice is the loss of detail and, like, the general loss of quality on the portals. Instead, they look like something someone might have cooked up in MS Paint with a gradient. I believe there's, like, an overlaid detail texture on this wall that is not present in the DirectX 8 version, or on walls in general. There's still some basic cube-mapped reflections, though they are very low quality. But overall, the graphics have definitely been significantly downgraded. Step 2, now, is resolution, though. Now, resolution is about as simple as it gets, you know. You just choose 4x3, 480p, right there. I figured, though, we would make a quick pit stop at 720p, which is, you know, more closer to something you would see on the Xbox 360 PS3 console generation. What's interesting is the center cursor that shows you where you're going to place your portals is significantly bigger at lower resolutions, proportionally to, you know, the window size, the rest of the game in general. But of course, we're not here to stop that easy, so we're going to go 4x3, and all the way down to the lowest resolution you can by default in Portal, 640 by 480. Now this is really low res. And this might be, like, you know, how people on some very underpowered machines, like when Portal actually released, would have played the game. But obviously, we're still running at a much higher frame rate. Let's pull up the frame rate again, CL_show show FPS 1. Oh, forgot to uncap it when I rebooted the game. We can do SV underscore cheats 1, and then FPS underscore max 1000. Wow, you can actually see the frame rate counter is actually hitting 1000 a lot more often than it was before, probably because my graphics card is doing a lot less work per frame, considering, you know, how much we've lowered it since, in terms of, like, resolution from all the other changes we did. But this is a very smooth gameplay experience, which we're gonna downgrade too. We can, using the same command that we used to change the FPS to reach 1000, we can lower it. Let's start with 30. Now this is the same frame rate that the Xbox 360 and PS3 ran this game at. Honestly, with this resolution, this frame rate, and this, like, graphics level, I would not be surprised if this could run on some very old machinery. Much older than the game itself. But, of course, we can go lower. We can actually go really low, all the way to, 5 FPS. This is pretty unplayable, so I'll raise that to a nice 12. It's better. It's not giving the audio issues that 5 FPS was giving us for a second there, if you noticed. But it is definitely not a smooth experience. That is alright, though. Because now that we're at such a low resolution and such a low frame rate, we're gonna... it's hard to say. It's definitely going to be a downgrade, but not in the way that you would think. We are going to be using lossless scaling to re-upscale and to bring Portal's current frame rate way, way up, which hopefully should give us some pretty nasty artifacts. But first, we're going to start with just upscaling, with FSR upscaling, and we're going to leave it at full screen, because I think that the worst way you can play a 4x3 game is by stretching it. So we are going to do exactly that. And here we are with our newly upscaled Portal. Now, because we're going from such a low resolution to such a high resolution, there's going to be lots of artifacts. As a matter of fact, the upscaling doesn't even realize that the turrets are supposed to be a smooth surface because of how low resolution they are. So you just get these edges all over them that look like just the edges of pixels trying to be connected. The upscaling just doesn't know that that's supposed to be smooth. And the further away you go, the more interesting they get. For example, I can't even see the iris on that one's eye from certain angles. Like this one, I can't see it. If I come over here, I can definitely see it. But jagged edges, still a really low frame rate. The stuff in the far reaches are blurry and compressed. And just the way that it's stretched, if I can go over here and grab a cube, it's not really too noticeable right now, but the minute you see something like a cube, which is most definitely supposed to be square, being rectangular, that is quite the sign. But now, it's time for our final downgrade, where we add frame generation to bring it back up to a higher frame rate, but at the same time, the input latency and the visual artifacting should be very, very interesting. We are first starting out, though, even with that little bit of movement, I can already see. We're first starting out with 5 times frame generation. For every fake frame, it generates 5 new ones to try to do its best to smooth out this incredibly low frame rate, which at this level, 12 FPS is going to bring us up to a solid 60, which unfortunately won't get through as recording is only 30 FPS, but when I move the mouse around, ooh, yeah, you can definitely see some smearing, especially with the cursor. Like, ooh, there's some interesting artifacts on these walls here. It is smoother. Like, motion is definitely smoother, but at the same time, your input latency is not going to lower like it does with real higher frame rates. It's just going to look smoother. Now frame gen, I believe, I don't like it, really. I think it could be a useful tool at lower frame rates for people with lower end hardware, but I do not like the current use of, like, being required to hit 30 FPS in some games, like how Lego Batman, the new one, states it should be used. But yeah, there are definitely some artifacts. Now, in my testing, I found that the lowest we can go, frame rate-wise, with Portal at least, and still have it be frame genning properly, is 12 FPS. So the only way to make that more interesting is by raising it. Now, lossless scaling has a very, very high frame gen cap of 20. For each real frame, it'll insert 20 frames to try to make it smoother, which must do some really, really strange stuff. So we are going to do that. Alright, here we go. We are now frame genning from 12 FPS up to 240. I feel like it definitely is worse than it was before. It's even smoother again. I have a very high refresh rate monitor. But, oh, the visual artifacting. Yeah, it is definitely worse. Look at the edge of the cube, how it, like, blurs and bends, like, what should be that straight door frame into just a mess. Everything just looks very blurry. It's like my screen is covered in Vaseline, you know? Just smears everywhere, smears and warping. And, of course, under that 240 frame, like, exterior, you're still getting, 12 frames, which means, like, lots of input delay, lots of mouse jitteriness. It's going to be very hard to aim at this low frame rate. Portal thankfully doesn't require too much aiming, but if you were playing a first-person shooter, this would be pretty bad. But there is still one last thing you can do with lossless scaling, and that is lowering the flow scale of the fake frames. I believe it's when you give the frames to the algorithm that is, making the new fake frames, it gives it to it at a lower resolution, which should result in, hopefully, even more artifacting. Alright, to start, we have lowered the flow rate from the max down to 50. And, oh, yeah, the artifacts are definitely worse. Like, wow. Oh, you can see, I just noticed, up in the top right, it keeps trying to move the frame counter with the level geometry, which is very interesting, especially considering, from frame to frame, it isn't moving at all, which tells me it's definitely trying to do lots of prediction with these frame gen. And, wow, moving almost feels like it decreases the resolution at this level. But we can still lower it even more. This is the lowest we can go. 25%, which means each frame is 25% the resolution of the game. That's passed through to the algorithm. And the game is already only at 480p. So when I move my mouse, I expect there to be a lot worse artifacts. It's surprisingly not that bad, actually. I expected it to be a lot worse. It's definitely not great. As a matter of fact, like, as I'm walking towards these walls, it feels like parts of it are growing and parts of it are shrinking. That is really interesting. I guess, like, it really doesn't have a lot of detail to work with. Like, walking across, you can see definitely this game was not meant to be pushed to these limits. My portal cursor is now jumping all around as I move. So is my frame rate counter as before, but even worse now. Let's take a look at the portals. I mean, yeah. Wow. That is so yeah, that is interesting. It almost looks like when I'm looking through the portal, it's like at a lower frame rate than everything else, because I guess like the frame gen algorithm doesn't really know what to do through it, you know? Let's take a look at Shell in this low graphics, do the little trick. Wow. Yeah. Low resolution, low polygons, low textures. Wow. This, I believe, is the limit, at least for what we're doing today, with how far we can push this game. Yeah. Wow. And here's the final before and after. While you watch that, I really hope that you enjoyed, as I put a lot of work into this video. You may have noticed a bump in the quality this time around. And if you enjoyed, feel free to like, subscribe, do whatever you want. Please also try maybe hyping the video. That helps a lot. And thank you for watching.